Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about my um, project that I'm pretty proud of, and I think it's pretty cool, and I think you might like it as well. So it's called contentmodel.io. Um, Excuse the amateur logo. I came up with it. I made it myself in Figma, so don't judge. So who am I? My name is Ante. I've been a software developer for 8 years now. And most recently, I joined Contentful to be a product demo engineer. But today, I'm here in my unofficial role. And as a software developer, especially during the pandemic, I work on a lot of side projects, and sometimes I even finish some of them. So that's what I'm talking about today. So you can find me on Twitter, Ante Šepić, and let's dive in. So I want to talk to you about content modeling, which is a topic that I'm really passionate about. So I think it's both scary but also super important. So we can't run away from it. So I've been part of the Contentful community for a while now. We have this awesome Slack community where people help each other, and I've been noticing that a lot of times a question comes up related to content modeling, whether it's like how to get started, asking for some help with content modeling, content model reviews, and I wanted to explore the topic more because it's also something I'm passionate about, and I want to understand it better. So why do I think content modeling is important? If your content model is lean and well done, you'll be faster to market. You will be quicker on building the site and then also onboarding your editors. It's also important because it needs to scale. As your project grows, your content model needs to grow with you, and it needs to support more entries in your space and delivery on the front end. And then what I think is most important to point out is it affects pretty much everyone, because whether you are an editor who's working on adding content to Contentful, a good or bad content model can affect your experience, how you perceive Contentful and CMS in general. If it's cumbersome to enter entries into Contentful or any CMS, editors will not like you. And same for developers. And here I'm speaking from personal experience. It's important to have a good API. And in Contentful, your API kind of depends also on your content model. And so having a good content model that you can later query efficiently for your use case is also super important. But then it's important, but it's also scary, because I remember when I started with the headless CMS, coming from WordPress, where your content model is pretty defined, it was pretty scary to start out. You're faced with this black canvas, and then you have to figure out like your content model. And then you also, as I said, you need to make sure it scales. Once you have hundreds or thousands of entries in your space, in your contentful space, for example, it can be a bit tricky to migrate your content model to some new version, because you then need to write some migration scripts and migrate your data. So you can't get it super perfect from start, but you want to come as close as possible. And then also, as your content model grows to from couple of content types to tens of content types, as you need to start making changes, it's difficult, right? A content type within a content model is the single unit, but it's not self-encompassed. It depends on other content types through references. And so to make some changes, you need to understand your content model as a whole, and as I said, editorial and API experience as a whole to make informed decisions. And then for people or teams or agencies who have either multiple spaces for a single project or multiple projects for their clients, your content models often live in Contentful or in a JSON file somewhere in a Git repository. But people who need access to those content models to brainstorm, to make changes, to understand it, might not also have access to Contentful, or might not be technical enough to understand like what a JSON is, or to have a Git access. So I think also keeping your content models accessible somewhere else is a good idea. So basically, those are the problems that I realized exist. I mean, some of them. And here's how I'm trying to solve it with contentmodel.io. So I'm going to jump in to a little demo to show you what it's about. So here is an example contentful space that I just created. And as you can see, it has a content model. This was generated by Contentful when I created my space. When you create a new Contentful space, it offers you some starting content models. And I picked this one. So you can see it has around 9, 8, 9, 10 content types. So it's not super complex, but it's also not super simple. So let's say I, as a person who is responsible for the content model within a company, I want to make some change, right? I either want to add a new content type, or even more difficult, I want to change to an existing one. But to do that, I need to be informed. I need to understand, like, what will that affect, right? And so if I could go one by one to a content model, open it, like, look what fields it has. If, for example, like here, if I click on the layout, it has references. So then I need to check, like, oh, what is this actually referencing? Okay, so this content model, content type depends on this, this, this. And it quickly becomes, like, difficult to follow. So I wanted to find a better way to represent this. And here's where contentmodel.io, which is a project that I built, comes in. So basically, the way it works is after you authenticate, which I already did, you can upload your content model to a site and then have it visualized. So, and when it's visualized, it's much easier to understand, as you'll see. So if I go to visualize content model, I've built a few options for you to pull in your content model. This first one is the recommended way, because in that way, you can authenticate with Contentful. It's a read-only management token. It's super secure, and you can always revoke it. But I also support, like, copy-pasting a JSON prime file from your CLI tool, or you can manually enter your space ID and management token. So for this demonstration, I'm going to pull from Contentful, and I'm going to authenticate.
Can you do a little bit command plus 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 plus?
Is it too? Yeah.
Yeah, that is better. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Stefan. Yeah. Apologies to people. So yeah, I'm going to pull from Contentful. Let's authenticate. Authorize. And the process basically relies on OAuth from Contentful. It goes to Contentful, you authenticate there, and Contentful returns back to me a management token. And it's pretty unique here. It's a read-only token, so it's a safe way for you to share something with a site. And even if you don't trust me or trust the code that's on GitHub that I'll show later, you can rest assured that, like, I don't have write access. I can't mess with your site. So just want to point it out. That's why this way is the recommended way. So once you authenticate, I pull in a list of spaces. Right now I have just one, but if you belong to multiple Contentful organizations, or your organization had multiple spaces, they would all be listed here. So in this case, I'm going to choose LMS, and then an environment, which is an optional step. By default, I pull from your main environment, but if you have many of them, you can change which one you want to pull your content model from. And then we go to the next step. So here I want to be flexible. I've gotten some feedback that people keep content types for multiple projects within the same space. So it often doesn't make sense to pull all of them for a specific space. So here you can very easily deselect, select all, or just uncheck some of them, and then pull them in. So let's say that for this brainstorming, I only want to understand my layout content types. So I'm going to just import those. So I click Go to Visualization, and then that's it. Here we are, your content model visualized. I think much easier to understand than this table. Let me zoom in here. So I think much easier to understand than this table. You can drag and drop the content types. When I pull in, I try to assemble them in approximately a grid, so it's not like one row or like spread out. But oftentimes those positioning is not going to make sense. So you can, as a person that's authoring this visualization, you can assemble and, like, reorder them as you wish. You can center, and then there's also full screen. If on a larger content type, content model, you want to go full screen because you'll have many content types. And one thing to point out, after you save, like it doesn't matter if you were zoomed in or where your screen was. That's not what the site remembers. It's just the relationship between different content type cards, and that's what gets stored. So I continue, and my LMS site, I'll give it a small, simple title and description. You can use Markdown. Description. Typing is hard. And then also you can choose, and this is something that I added very recently by popular feedback, is you can choose whether to list it on the site publicly, whether it's unlisted, but still people who have links can access it. This is good, for example, when you need to share it with someone, but you don't want the rest of the community to see it. Then you can choose private mode. And just for demonstration, I think I'll go for public so you can see what it looks like on the site. So I go save and publish, and that's it. You get a nice URL. And let's go to the content model. And here you are. You're now listed on the site. Here's your name, and here's your content model. So you can just copy paste this URL, this simple URL, and give it to anyone, and they can access it and see your content model. So that's one use case for you to visualize content model, right? But I also wanted to share, like, what's the benefit of for people who are not who don't have a content model to share but want to benefit from the site. And for those people, it's there's a browse mode. So you've noticed the new content model that I publish is here. So that's because I chose the public mode, and anyone who visits the site can then browse through all the public content models. So let's say you are a person who's starting their learning management site or any kind of site. Let's say you want to, I'll pick out Henshin here because I love the site. So let's say you want to start your own Power Ranger fan site, and we have this content model that Shai shared. So thank you, Shai, for sharing. And I will first go and delete my space so I can demonstrate it for you. So let's quickly delete this space. And then let's create a new space. Power Rangers Go. I don't know if that's the official. Okay, so I chose empty space, and now I have a completely empty space. So if I go to content model, I don't have anything here, right? So cool, Shai shared this content model, so let me import it. So I click import to Contentful, and again, you can authenticate with Contentful. In this scenario, I actually ask you for a different token because I need to write to your space. But for security, this token is not stored in the database. It's in the session storage. So as soon as you close the tab, leave the site, it'll be gone. But you can also manually revoke it. So let's authenticate with Contentful once again. Let's zoom in here. So it asked me, do you want to authorize? Yes, please. And then it's going to redirect us back soon. Cool. So this is where we were. So again, it fetches all my spaces, and you can see the Power Rangers Go space that I just created. So I'll choose that one. You can again choose an environment. The default is fine for us. Cool. So you have some options here. So you have publish and import. So by default, when Contentful CLI imports a content model into space, it pushes it there in a draft state. So there's an option for you to immediately publish it, or if you don't want to have it published immediately, you can leave this unchecked. So let's publish it. And again, you can filter. Maybe a person shared their whole content model, but you want to import just a subsection of it. You can again uncheck specific content types here. But in this case, I'm going to import everything since it's so simple. And I click import content model, and that's it. The site in the background will use the Contentful CLI to fetch this content model and then import it to your space. So it says success. So let's check it out. It's redirecting me again back to the Power Rangers Go space. And you see we have these content types that Shai authored. We have it now in our own space, and you can easily get started, start and adding entries to it, whatever you do in your contentful space. So it's super handy to keep content models here because the community can then benefit from them. And also you can brag that you have the best content model on the site. It's now the time to do that because there are not so many of them. People just only started sharing them. Okay, so someone already shared the content model while I was demonstrating, so that's nice. So yeah, we have quite a few now. It's not like super, the browsing is not super powerful right now. It's just a list because at the start obviously had very little content models, but as time goes by, I'll add more. So you can always access the content models that you shared, and you can of course edit them, change the visibility if you accidentally made it public, change the description. And one cool thing is that I also generate these previews of content models. And also if you share your URL to your content model, I also generate a nice little preview graphic, which is pretty cool. So let's get back to the slides. So I think it's pretty cool already, but there's more work to be done. And people have already requested some features, and I also have some of the ideas on my own. So I wanted to quickly share with you what's planned. So yeah, this is like a bit of a popular meme, but yeah, how it started, how it's going. So from a JSON file, which is hardly readable, I think we now have a pretty nice visualization, and it's I think it's much easier to grasp your content model when it's presented in a friendly diagram. So what's something that I'm working on next? So I want to improve the discoverability tools. So as I said, right now it's just a list. There's no search, there's no tagging. It just didn't make sense to focus on these features so early on while there's not much content on the site. So I'm going to be adding those. I'll add some kind of a like, heart, love button so people can show appreciation for a good content model. Because right now, if you post a content model on the site, you get no feedback like are people finding it useful or not. So I want to enable that. I'm already, as you saw, generating images of content models, but there's no way for you to download it right now. I mean, you can inspect element and download it manually, but I want to make it more accessible, so you'll be able to download it as a JSON or PNG. You can print it out, put it on the wall. Dark mode, maybe. Some people ask for it. And then right now, you can only import content models to the site, which is cool. But I also want to enable people to have a space where they can brainstorm content models. I know from my personal experience, when you're starting a new project, it's nice to have a way where you can brainstorm about your content model and start putting the pieces together. And I haven't found a good tool to do that. There are some tools that focus on databases, but I think I can do a better job by focusing on a specific use case of content models. I want to add commenting support as well, just again for people to discuss, ask some questions to the author. And I also plan working on content model that I have for teams. So right now, all the features so far were focused on a single person, but I know like many people work within a larger team in Contentful with Contentful, and I want to enable that as well. So I will be adding some kind of a collaboration, sharing of content models with permissions, so you can add your team and assign access. I want to add APIs for CI integration, so you can construct visualizations of your content model on the go as soon as you deploy or change a content model and run a webhook through Contentful. And then also versioning, so you can always get back to a previous version of your content model if you mess something up. How can you get involved? First of all, and most importantly, share your content models publicly if you can. I know most people, I mean, not most, but a lot of people work in the companies and they may be not so happy with sharing content model publicly. I think There's no one's going to shame you for a bad content model, and I think it can bring more good than bad. But share your public projects. There's no bar that you have to cross to share your content model. It's good or bad, simple or complex. Just let people understand how you're building your sites and empower them to build their own. You can suggest new features and report problems, of course. You can always reach out to me. There's an email address at the end of the slide, but there's also you can also reach out on Twitter. But then most importantly, as I already said, content model.io is open source. So you can check it out on GitHub, see what am I doing with those management tokens that I'm asking from you. There are two separate repos for the front end and for the back end. I link to the repo from the site, so you can find it there. And yeah, spread the word. Get involved in any way you can. This is a community project. It's not contentful sponsored, so it's important for us to keep it alive. So if you find it useful and cool, I would appreciate your involvement. And that's it from me. Yeah, feel free to reach out on the email address or at Twitter.